So we continue over here in chapter 27, where the Alter Rebbe points out that it's not about negating the reality of the temptations or the messages and temptations of the Yetzer Hara, but it's about overcoming. It's about triumphing over these messages or these temptations of the Yetzer Hara. They're there because, again, we're dealing with the Beinoni and not the Tzaddik. The Tzaddik has transformed his Yetzer Hara, the Beinoni has not. We made it very clear, not Chas v'Shalom, God forbid, to say because a Beinoni person could give in to his Yetzer Hara. No. The moment the person gives into Yetzer Hara, he's called a Rosh already. In other words, when he Chas v'Shalom accepts, even in the message, deliberately, willingly, advertently accepts the taiva or the signal which the Yetzer Hara is sending to the person's machshava, to his thought, to Chas v'Shalom think something inappropriate, okay, even in thought, speech, action rather, speech, but we're dealing even in thought. The moment the person willingly accepts that thought from the which is as mentioned, it's a Torah prohibition. Not just a good suggestion, a Torah prohibition that a person withhold himself to entertain himself from this which Torah prohibits man to entertain his thoughts with. Also, his eyes, we spoke about in previous weeks, simply to guard his eyes, his thoughts, and so on. So and when Chas v'Shalom someone formally violates or willingly violates, he's called a Rasha. But in this context, when he said it's a Beinoni means to say that don't feel bad or let it not bring you down the fact that you have this battle. The fact that you have this battle is because you're a Beinoni, you have not transformed the Yetzer Hara, thus you do have a Yetzer Hara. And if you have a Yetzer Hara, there are going to be presentations of the Yetzer Hara. He's going to try to convince you to Chas v'Shalom, look there, think that, etc., things which Torah says is prohibited to look and to think, etc. And what Hashem wants from us is to triumph over that signal, or over that message, over that presentation of the Yetzer Hara. And once we look at it from this perspective, not to think we're a tzaddik again, not to delusion, not to enter in some type of delusion or delusionary establishment within ourselves that we are this great tzaddik, and therefore how is it that I had this lowly type of challenge? No. Halavai could be a Beinoni, which again, a Beinoni is like Ovar v'leyaver miyom, someone who never sinned. He has temptations, and that's where he differs in the tzaddik. He has the temptations to sin, even in action, in speech, and even how much more so in thought. But he never gives in to that temptation. And he's always, again, this is in the leises and the negative mitzvahs, and he always does whatever he has to do. And again, the Talmud Torah keneged kulam. So really, we can, to be honest with ourselves, Halavai would be a Beinoni all the time. But one thing is clear: once we know that we're not the tzaddik and the Beinoni or Halavai Beinoni, but we are basically the Beinoni, so then we'll put things in perspective. Yes, we do have a Yetzer Hara, but the kunz, in other words, what Hashem really wants from us, and this is our service, to constantly override and overcome and triumph over the messages and presentations of the Yetzer Hara, and to understand that this is a reason to be joyous, to be joyful, and to stand in a state of elation, because as Dr. Rebbe used Lashon, we put an emphasis on this with Dr. Rebbe mentioned this, or this Maimon Azal, the saying of our sages of blessed memory, that Yashav Le'avar Aveira, it's a mitzvah that he's doing. Every time that he doesn't give in to a temptation, it's a great mitzvah that he's doing. So when you do a mitzvah, you're happy. Not the other way around. Additional to the fact there's so much reward waiting for you for every time you're able to overcome a temptation, every time you do overcome a temptation. Nesim lischar, kilos mitzvahs, like you did a mitzvah, so it's a reason to be sameach and not chas v'shalom, the opposite. So again, this is just recapping this which we elaborated in the previous weeks. You could see it on the different websites which we presented in the past, and to hear it and to go into and to pick up on the details of this which we have learned up till now. We are going to continue where we left off last week. V'lachein, which is in the middle of the page Lamed Daled, in the original text of Tanya. And if you're looking in the English, it's pretty much a third into this chapter of 26. V'lachein, and therefore, al yipel lev adam olav, man's heart should not fall upon him, which means, let's literally translate it, but let's understand it. His heart should not fall in when he notices these different presentations of the Yetzer Hara. He should not become depressed or down-spirited because of this battle or because of these presentations which the Yetzer Hara presents to him. He should not, his heart should not be bothered or hurt very much. Gam im yikein kol yomo b'milchamazu. Even if he will all his life be in this battle, in this war. This is a very strong statement.
I'm thinking of like PowerPoint presentation, like doing project presentation. It's a point doing a PowerPoint presentation.
What? Yes. No, but I'm using the same word.
I know.
He presents us something, and he presents us to us with passion and temptation and lust and desire. He makes it our desire and our lust, but we have to overcome. But this is again a very famous revolutionary statement of the Alter Rebbe, which makes it clear that even all your life, that today, when you're 50, when you're 60, when you're 70, when you're 80, and as we enter into Chaim Nitzchim, into eternal life when Mashiach will come, all your life you will have this very war. Do not feel bad about it. And to think to himself, when I started my Avodas Hashem, I had these challenges, and it was tormenting, but I overcame it. And one week after another, a month after another month, a year after another year, a decade, 2 decades. No, before this year, how much do I have to fight with this Yetzer Hara? Maybe something fundamental should change within my whole makeup, that I shouldn't have these intense wars. Don't you think that I'm deserving to, be upgraded to some higher level, that these challenges shouldn't be, these challenges shouldn't be so intense, or these challenges shouldn't be so potent? Comes the Alter Rebbe, and that could be a reason. Yeda Levavi, a person could be hurt from it. So the Alter Rebbe says, it could be that's the reason why you were born. God, and again, if you want to use the terms also Bein and the Tzad, maybe I should be upgraded to a Tzad. And a Tzaddik, as we know, has already transformed his Yetzer Hara. He's not battled with these type of, doesn't have these battles. Like Dr. Rebbe used the Lashon, that God did not call Tzaddikim Zainim, in the term of that famous pasuk, L'sasuru, do not go after your heart and your eyes. Ashratim Zainim Achareim. Zainim literally means that you look out for it, but also it has the connotation of the znus, which means immodesty and inappropriate behavior, etc. But that God doesn't call it tzaddikim zonim, because the tzaddikim don't have these problems. Again, it's hard to understand what a tzaddik really, or how is it a person could be with his 2 feet on the ground and yet doesn't have these problems. That's the level of a tzaddik. We understand it, we perceive it or not. This is the level of a tzaddik. So, getting back to, as opposed to the Beinoni, right? This is the Torah is dealing with the Beinoni, but the person could say, maybe I should be upgraded to a tzaddik, that I shouldn't have these challenges, as I progress and I advance in my life. So Alter Rebbe says, Don't feel bad. Al yipil lev adam. Don't let not your heart cave in. And don't feel bad. Gam im yekein kol yoma b'milchama. Even all your days, your entire life, you will be in this battle. And God, for whatever reason He has, capital H, doesn't want to upgrade you to a level of tzaddik. As we said, tzaddik is a gift from heaven. When a Kadosh Baruch Hu sees that a person toils in his life as a Beinoni, sometimes God would say, I want to upgrade this person to be a tzaddik. As we said, Avedis Matonet is like a kohen.
Enough points to be upgraded.
So it can be. Or sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides someone who even didn't go through the enormous toil of a Beinoni, God decides someone should be a tzaddik. Can very well be. So Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was born, in Smal Abayis Kulayra, everything he shone, his face was glowing because he was already a tzaddik very early in his age. But in tzaddikim itself, there's definitely so many levels. Because God is infinite. There's no way a person could say, I reached the climax. Because God is infinite, so we could always climb with infinite steps. Or infinite amount of steps, because there's no end how much a person could become close to Kodesh Baruch Hu. But the main thing is, the message here is God's decision. We want to be a tzaddik, like the pasuk says. Alter Rebbe equates it to the kohen. A person could work all his life, or could try all his life to do everything he can to be a kohen. He'll never become a kohen, because a kohen is something or you are or you're not. Similarly, when it comes to a tzaddik, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides the person is going to be a tzaddik. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides the person is going to be a tzaddik, that's wonderful. But what if HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided the person is not going to be a tzaddik? Means to say that all his life, when he's 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and onwards, he has the same struggle as 50 years before. That could be a reason for that the person feel very bad about. So Alter Rebbe says, don't feel bad about it, because maybe this is the reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu put you in this world. This is the reason why you were created, was to be precisely the Beinoni and to be a milchama, at war, at battle all your life. And once you understand that this is the reason, you understand that this is why you were created, and this is what Hashem wants from you and demands from you, and the biggest proof that He demands this from you, because you notice you were not upgraded to the level of a tzaddik. So you know this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. That itself is enough to be sameach, to be joyful, and appreciative of your particular mandate that HaKadosh Baruch Hu established and chose for you. Because maybe that's why you're created. This is your service, to constantly subdue the Yetzer Hara. Because a tzaddik is more like, it's not the lashon, the two famous expressions of iskafia and ishapcha. Iskafia means you're subduing. Ishapcha means you transform. This is pretty much encapsulates the two levels of the Aveda of the tzaddik and the Beinoni. The tzaddik did the Aveda of ishapcha, he already transformed his Yetzer Hara, while the Beinoni, the Yetzer Hara, is in full force and full tact, and therefore
who gets more reward?
Well, perhaps it could be you're saying something. Because of the toil, the reward, the toil, the work, the hard, the great effort of having Yetzer Hara and overcoming the Yetzer Hara on a constant basis, perhaps it could be more challenging than a tzaddik, which is already there. So firstly, I would just say usually a tzaddik is someone who went through already the procedure of the Beinoni that ultimately became a tzaddik. So he went through that toil, that war, so someone usually, an usual basis. But I don't know what the life of the tzaddik is. I'm not exactly sure how it is, and if there's, obviously, like we said, there's no end to how much a person could climb in a service to God, because God is infinite. So I don't know exactly. It could be the life of the tzaddik, or the avodah, the service of the tzaddik, probably comes with much effort, but it definitely is very different and very distinct than the avodah of the Beinoni. And it could be because of the avodah of the Beinoni has clearly a strong Yetzer Hara, and you have to overcome the Yetzer Hara. It could be it probably is more effort and more toil. Maybe there is more, as a result, perhaps more reward. but the difference is, one is about iskafia and one is about ishapcha. Iskafia means I subdue the Yetzer Hara, while ishapcha means I transform the Yetzer Hara. But maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu, lekach nivra, he says, maybe this is why you were created, leikafia, to constantly subdue the Yetzer Hara. Maybe that's why you were created. Now, the Alter Rebbe is going to make very clear. He's going to culminate this point, which we just made, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu already established what the service of the person is to be, or a Beinoni or a Tzaddik. A Tzaddik She'einu Gomer, a Tzaddik Gomer, naturally with the two differences to a different level of Tzaddikim, which in one of them there's multiple different types of tzaddik. Okay, this is not to go into what the Alter Rebbe, when he defined the tzaddik in the earlier prakim, right, from the beginning or from later, Ches, Tes, Yud, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, etc. Yud Beis is already the Beinoni. But the Alter Rebbe is already, again, the Alter Rebbe is going to culminate this with this point that HaKadosh Baruch Hu establishes what's the service of what is the destiny or the service of every single human being, every single yid, or every single human being even. And in this case, HaKadosh Baruch Hu established that this yid is going to be a Beinoni, as opposed to a tzaddik. But the only thing which we might have a problem with, does it mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu established for a particular yid to live all his life, not to reach any shleimus, not to reach any completion, any state of completion in the service to God? So Alter Rebbe is going to make it very clear, and he's going to say, Ishapcha sounds, the idea of transformation, of the Aved of the Tzaddik, which deals with transformation, sounds very noble, and it sounds very complete, and sounds very accomplishing. The Iskafia, you see the effort, but you don't see so much of the person reached a level of shleimus or some wholesomeness, or shleimus means completion in his service to God, because it's something that he knows the Yetzer Hara is in full tact, like when he was 16 years old. And he has, or when he's younger, and he has this constant battle, and he's told his service is not l'ishapcha, to transform the Yetzer Hara. His service is likafia, which means to do iskafia, to subdue, on a constant basis. A person could have this challenge and need to, and chas v'shalom, not to drop from Beinoni to Rasha, do this iskafia or execute this iskafia. It could be 1,000 times in a day, sometimes 1,000 times in an hour. Can be. So, and what is he told? Maybe they wish to Hashem. This is what Hashem has in plan for you. This is your destiny. So, does it mean that Hashem has a destiny, a plan for me, that it's just not getting anywhere? Is there some intrinsic virtue to this service on its own merit? Right? Is this something special? And Alter Rebbe is going to point out, and he says, yes, indeed. You should know that God has two levels or two types of nachas ruach. I mean, two types of satisfactions, two types of pleasure and satisfaction that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has in this world from the service of the Jew, the service of the Yid. He says one of them is the service of iskafia, and one of them is the service of ishapcha. It's not that you're second best. It's two types of pleasures God has, just like even within our taste buds and our pleasures which we have. Sometimes we like things, the same person, like sometimes you're putting sugar into something, into coffee or whatever it is, so you like things sweet, right? So why, when you were sitting and eating that vegetable, did you pour salt on the tomato or whatever it is? Do you like sweet, or you like not bitter, but you like something sharp? You like pepper, black pepper, and paprika. The answer is that every person, the same person, it's two different pleasures which he has. He has a pleasure from the sweet, and he has a pleasure from the sharp. So it's the same person. It's not like the two separate people who say, in the same world there are two separate people, one loves sweet and one loves sharp. And therefore this person is putting sugar and this person is putting salt and pepper. It's the same person. That the same person, even in one meal, certain things he wants to add sugar, and certain he wants precisely not sugar. You don't put sugar on your tomatoes or anything which someone wants it nice and sharp. You put salt, not pepper. And conversely, you don't put salt in your coffee, because you have because the average person has two separate It's like two worlds, two separate types of taste buds, two separate pleasures. And it says, Lahavdil, HaKadosh Baruch Hu also has two pleasures. He has the pleasure of the tzaddik, which is the pleasure of his hapcha, but he has another separate pleasure of the sharp. Not so much the sweet, but the sharp. And in this case, sharp in this context means that the person is challenged with a very strong and potent presentation of the Yetzer Hara, and he overcomes the Yetzer Hara. And to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's a separate and it's an equal pleasure. In other words, equal means to say, in the level which elicits HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in other words, in the context of eliciting HaKadosh Baruch Hu's pleasure, it's a separate pleasure HaKadosh Baruch Hu has. So don't think you're maybe on the surface it doesn't seem wholesome, it doesn't seem complete, because you're fighting with the same Yetzer Hara for many decades, and he's presenting you the same shtusim, the same nonsense, and he presents you with such passion, and you know it's not good for you, and you overcame it, and you're a Beinoni. The moment you give in, you're a Rosh, so you overcame it, and and it comes back to you, and again it's a challenge. Why should it be a challenge? Apparently you already understood that it wasn't good for you, and you threw it away 5 minutes ago, 5 seconds ago, but no, he comes very, very strong. Yetzer Hara comes in very strong. And it could, again, a person could enter into this depression, melancholy, again and again and again and again. So what do you answer me? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu, maybe I'm created like that. Maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's my destiny. Maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu created me precisely to be a Beinoni, never to be a tzaddik. Fine. But that's a half a consolation, apparently. Because why? Because in the end of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created me, so I adhere to that. I know that I'm not a tzaddik, so I understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has this in stock for me. He has this in plan. This is part of his master plan that I should not be a tzaddik, I should be a Beinoni. So it's a consolation, and therefore I could overcome my hard feelings about it. Fine, but it's still an incomplete consolation, because perhaps I feel that I'm in the end second best, or just overcoming, merely entering into the green line. Because I have the same Yetzer Hara as a Rasha, and I have the same presentation, that Yetzer Hara is presenting me the same presentations as the Rasha or the bum on the street. So I feel that as much as I know that it's some type of consolation, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells me this is perhaps why you were created, and the biggest proof is you weren't upgraded, because you know you still have a strong Yetzer Hara. So fine, it's some type of a calm and some type of a soothing message, but yet it's incomplete, because I know I didn't reach anything. And it could be all my life you're telling me that I have the same challenge like when I was 20 or 16. Comes the Alter Rebbe and says this latter message which we just said. Don't think that way. Because just like again by man you have the same person have two different type of pleasures, you should know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had two separate type of pleasures. He has one pleasure of the tzaddik, of his hapcha, of complete transformation of Yetzer Hara, and the same God has another type of pleasure, which is again the pleasure of iskafiyus, constantly subduing the person, the yid constantly, in this case the Beinoni, constantly subduing his Yetzer Hara. So you're not coming in second to the best or second place, or just overcoming that the green line, entering into the green line.
Green lane.
Green lane, right? No, the answer is not so. Because ultimately our whole service in this world is to bring pleasure to our Creator, to the Almighty. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself establishes Shnei Mini Nachas Ruach L'fanav. He has two types of nachas. So it's the second consolation is not only that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created me like that, and therefore I should be happy that I follow His plan. But more than that, I should know that He Himself has two types of pleasures. So when I do this iskafia on a constant basis, I'm bringing an equal pleasure. I mean, it's very different and distinct from the pleasure with the tzaddik, but I'm bringing a whole set of pleasures, contributing, or bringing out a nachas ruach, a tainug, a pleasure to my Creator, because He Himself has a special tainug, a special pleasure from the service of iskafia as opposed to ishapcha. In other words, of subduing as opposed to transformation. It's a transformation in all. He has a separate pleasure of the Avodah of the Tzaddik, which is about transformation. But it's not the Tzaddik is the icon, and then I'm just, right on the bottom of the barrel, just trying to, just not to drown, and therefore really nothing worth. No. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a separate set of pleasures, which is the Avodah of Iskafia. And therefore, this is another reason, the fact that you're constantly bringing tainug, pleasure, to your Creator, it's another reason to be happy, and not the other way around. So again, the first thing Dal Rebbe goes back, like we said, he goes back to the first type of consolation. So he's saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he established who is going to remain in Beinani, and if you feel that if you know very well, if you're only honest with yourself, that you're not the tzaddik, you're still the Beinani, you should know this is what he has in plan for you. So that's the first thing Dal Rebbe says, and then he goes on and he says, no, HaKadosh Baruch Hu as well, the other dimension, which we just mentioned, that he has a separate nachas ruach, has a separate satisfaction when a person constantly subdues the Yetzer Hara. So the first thing he says, Vazamari, this is what Eve said, but also Rishaim. And one of the things the Alter Rebbe asked is that here, one of the places the Alter Rebbe answers the question, what he asked in the very first chapter of Tanya. Alter Rebbe asked the question, that Eve turns to God and he says, God, you created tzaddikim and you created Rishaim. You created tzaddikim and you created Rishaim. So Alter Rebbe asked that Kodesh Baruch Hu created tzaddikim? No, a tzaddik Mirasha, he brings the Gemara there, Nida, or the Taisus, the Gemara as well says that God created the entire personality of man, and also everything which will unfold in the person's life, rich, poor, silly, wise, and so on. The Gemara says one thing God doesn't intervene. If he's going to be a tzaddik, he's going to be a Rasha, because that's completely given over to the freedom of choice of man. So the Rebbe asks on Eve. Eve turns to God and says, God, you barasa tzaddikim, barasa rishayim, you created tzaddikim, you created rishayim. God doesn't create tzaddikim, God doesn't create rishayim. It's in the hands of man to be a tzaddik or a rasha.
So what does he say then?
What? Eov, Job. Yeah. He writes that in the Sefer Eov. Barasa tzaddikim, barasa rishayim.
He's mistaken then.
What?
He's mistaken.
Oh no, Eve didn't make a mistake. Especially, it's part of Tanakh. So after Rebbe explained, now we can understand. Barasa Rishayim doesn't mean that you created the actual functioning Rasha. No, that's all in our hands if we're going to be a Beinani or a Rasha.
So what does Eov mean?
So Barasa Rishayim means, I said, God, you created the scenario of the Beinani that is very similar to a Rasha. That's what Eov is saying. God, you created a Jew, you created a scenario that a person can live all his life with the challenges of a Rasha. That's what he meant. Barasa, you created a situation that a person is never going to be upgraded from a Rasha to a Beinani. And let's see the words inside. We're going to understand it clear. Not that Kodesh created a Shem that the person will be a Rasha. Chas v'shalom. Because man has freedom of choice not to be a Rasha. What Eve meant of Yeshiagia Aleim Kimaiser Rishayim. Their challenges should be similar to the challenge of the Rishayim, b'machshavtam b'irhurim, in their thoughts and what's on their mind. In other words, these presentations of the Yetzer Hara will be like a Rasha type of presentation. In other words, that bringing out or tempting the individual, even the Beinani, to fall prey to the state of a Rasha, if they chas v'shalom accept not only in action and speech, but namely in this case the real challenge is in thought. And this is what Eov said. You created a scenario that the Beinani could be just on the verge of succumbing to the level of the Rasha, namely when it comes to thoughts. That's what Eov was telling HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Barasa, not chas v'shalom that they should be a Rasha b'emes, that he should formally accept his thoughts. Because once a person has freedom of choice, the person never wants to be a Rasha, even for a moment, even for a split second, even a millisecond, to accept willingly in my mind, in my eyes, something Hashem said not to, chas v'shalom. And I have freedom of choice to push everything away. And we mentioned the other times the beautiful expression of the Rebbe, b'shtei yadayim, with both hands. No. Absolute no. I'm not going to think that. I'm not going to look there. Whatever. It will ultimately tempt me to chas v'shalom entertain my mind with something which is inappropriate. No, absolutely not. But what he is saying is that the same person could be all his life, live a life of a Beinani, and he will have the same temptations which ultimately chas v'shalom could make him a Rasha if he ever gave in. But he will not give in. But Eve is saying, Barasa Rishayim, as he says, Yagia Alem Ki Ma'aser Rishayim. It should reach to them like the Ma'aser Rishayim in their thoughts, and whatever occupies their mind. Ve'heim, though, the Beinoni Yilnuchamin Tomid, they will have to be constant on battle for all their life, perhaps even Lasich Daitamihem, to completely divert the mind from accepting these inappropriate thoughts, and to completely subdue, or rather to subdue, the spirit of impurity. Was saying that you created a scenario with man that he can never annul these temptations of the Yetzer Hara. That's what he meant when he said Barasa Rishayim. You created a state that's just on the verge of Chas v'Shalom, a person being a Rasha. And he'll never be able, in other words, the Yetzer Hara will always be intact, he'll never be able to annul it completely. Because annulling the Yetzer Hara, a complete transformation of the Yetzer Hara, like Dr. Rebbe's Lashon is, the climax of it is Lashon and Zeh, that becomes like a Yetzer Tov Mamash, or something even in between, if it's the Tzaddik Gomer, so the incomplete Tzaddik, or the Tzaddik. But again, all the Tzaddik, that is the one who transforms the Yetzer Hara completely, and that's a separate service. So this is a partial consolation for the Beinoni, knowing that Barasa Kadosh Baruch Hu established that he should be the Beinoni, never the Tzaddik. In other words, he always has the battle Chas v'Shalom to succumb with the Yetzer Hara, which wants him to succumb. In other words, it's on the verge. It's on the verge. He can be on the verge. He'll never fall into being Chas v'Shalom Rasha because he has 100% control. Dr. Rebbe says we do have 100% control of our eyes, of our thoughts, etc. Despite the difficulty, we have 100% control, so we will not give in. But Barasa Rishayim, because you say that you created a state that a person could be on with this challenge, this Rosh Rabbeinu challenge, all his life, without ever being upgraded to tzaddik. So again, once we know, again based on what Iyov is saying as well, that Kadosh Baruch Hu already established our destiny. Don't worry about it. You want to be a tzaddik, you'll be a tzaddik. And if not, all your life b'Beinoni, that's what he hasn't planned for you. It's about giving him, capital H, nachas ruach, tainuk, pleasure. That's what I'm going to do. But yet, Alter Rebbe adds over here, again, the second dimension of this consolation to the Beinoni, that it's not the main thing is the being the tzaddik, and I'm just happen to be, for whatever reason God chose me, I'm just going to be the Beinoni, which is my avodah, my service is skafi, in other words, to subdue as opposed to transform. You should know, don't feel bad, because Shnei Min and Achas Ruach L'Fanav Yisbarach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has two separate taste buds. Because two kaviyachol, obviously two. Let's just follow the translation of the word. Shnei Min and Achas Ruach L'Fanav Yisbarach. There's two separate pleasures that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has. One of them, in other words, in heavens, by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by Hashem. One of them, from the complete annulment or nullification, perhaps rather, of the sitra achra, of the spirit of impurity, but completely. The complete transformation from bitterness into sweetness, which is again the avodah of the tzaddik, ishapcha, transformation, and he also from a state of darkness to a state of light, which is again through the tzaddik. That's one set of pleasure HaKadosh Baruch Hu has. Hashenis, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself has another pleasure, not through ishapcha, not through transformation, but iskafia, through subduing the sitra achra ba'odah b'tokva, as it's in its full strength and its full determination. Ugvurosa, and again in its strength. Umakbiyat makaneshan, the time when the sitra achra ascends like an eagle with full determination to present his evil presentation, or presentation which is so inappropriate and pure and so on, and he comes rushing in. He stands so high and so tall and so with such determination, like a nesha, like an eagle. But Misham Merida Hashem, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings it down again. HaKadosh Baruch Hu follows the decision. In other words, he follows suit to the decision of man. You bring it down in this realm, I'll bring it down in the heavens above. And that is a great pleasure what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has when he sees the Yidel in his struggle, the human being in his struggle, and especially again when it comes to thoughts, and the person constantly subdues the Yetzer Hara, he brings that more and more in the heavens, in the corresponding heavenly sphere of the Sitra Achra, of these impure forces, he again, as a result, he brings them down as well. And this is a great nachas ruach. Rather, this is a great pleasure for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Umisham Merida Hashem, there Hashem brings up Bisarusas L'Sata with their arousal. Now, the arousal of the Yid who serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu when he still has these challenges and these temptations which come his way, which is natural idea Beinani, which come through the Beinani. Zau Shomer HaKosov, we'll learn another little piece over here. Zau Shomer HaKosov, this is what the pasuk says. V'asei milu matam kasher hafti. The pasuk says, and this goes back all the way to Yaakov Avinu. If you remember, Yaakov sent Esav out to the field, and he told him, "Bring me some good stuff to eat, because I want to bench you, I want to bless you." Yaakov says before he passes on, he wants to bless him. So please bring me some good, tasty food that I love. So he says, if you look into the expression of the pasuk, he didn't tell Esav, bring me one type of tasty food. He used a plural expression. Not matam, or whatever the lashon something with a tam, but matamim, which is again a plural expression. What is kasher hafti, like Allah? Again, the reason why I use lashon rabim, because there's two types of pleasures which exist, and therefore Yaakov used the double expression of matamim, and ultimately it says in a number of places, Tikkunim, which is again part of Zohar, it says that who is really saying Vaseli matamim? It's the divine presence is saying this. The Almighty is saying this. This is the saying of the divine presence, Levoneho, to its children, which is Klal Yisrael, to Am Yisrael in general. God is telling you that Vaseli matamim kasher hafti. Make matamim, good stuff for me, but God also uses this plural expression because Hashem says, I have two pleasures. I have the pleasure of the tzaddik, which is about ishapcha, transformation, and have another pleasure of the Beinani, when you're constantly in battle, and again, it's only about subduing the Yetzer Hara, not transforming the Yetzer Hara. Just like when you're dealing with physical taste, as an example, like we started saying before, there's two types of pleasures, delights, and delicacies, echad, or delights within the human being, the pleasures within the human being, echad, one of them of sweet food. Arevim Mesukim is very similar translation. Arev, something is pleasure, one derives pleasure from a davar orev, it's sweet. Mesukim literally means sweet. Just like man has again one of them macholim arev from sweet, and mesukim sweet food. Vasheni, and the same person has pleasure midvarim charif mechamutzim, things which are sharp, or things which are sour. But it's not just. It has with a certain meziga nechaina. In other words, it's well mituvalim, spiced. It's sharp, but it's spiced in a way that you deal with the sharpness and you put on the right spices that it should ultimately contribute to your full pleasure. It becomes like a delight to calm and soothe the soul. And similarly, God has these two pleasures, one Aved of the Tzaddik, one of the Aved of the Beinani, one Aved of Ishapcha, one Aved of Iskafia. And this is what the pasuk says, that whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, He created L'Ma'anehu for His sake, and even the Rasha for the day, literally means for the day of his evil, which means not that the person chas v'shalom to be a rasha pirusha yasham minishay, which is again encapsulates the service of the Beinani, that he will return from his rishus, from the Yetzer Hara, which presents him this presentation which elicits from him again, or rather this temptation which Chas v'Shalom put him in the territory of a rasha, but he returns from it, he pulls himself back from it, that he makes his evil, the evil which exists, he brings it to light, and he brings it to day. Rasha l'yayim ra, he takes the ra and he makes it light and day, L'mayla in the heavens above, again, not through transformation, but through subduing, kadiskafi sitracha, the constant subduing the Yetzer Hara, the histalik yekor the kuchbricha le'ela, which brings about the deepest levels, and the deepest and the most brightest revelation of the most deepest levels with God in the heavens above. We will stop over here. I just wanted to add over here, when you said histalik, we pointed this out a week ago or 2 weeks ago, that histalik usually means removal. And here he says it in a positive connotation. Histalik, Yikor the Kuchabricha, brings out the dearness of God. Why would he use the expression of histalik? But he says, it's explained in a number of places with Hasidus, and this is what Alter Rebbe is referring to over here as well. He's connoting this notion of histalkus means in a positive way. It means the Eibishter is withdrawn. It's a symbol, or it's a demonstration of the core essence of God. Not the way God is involved in the inferior, but histalkus, the way that Kodesh Baruch Hu is removed completely and reserved, the way he is for himself, by himself, is a symbol of histalkus. Literally, what means histalkus? A person is removed. Could be used again negatively. Histalkus something could be the passing of a person, because he removed himself. The neshama has removed from his body. But in this context, the histalkus means HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way Eibush is reserved for himself, by himself, which is Yikor the Kuchabricha, the most dearest part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is revealed when the person does the service of iskafia, or the service of constant subduing his Yetzer Hara. And the Lashon of the Zohar, it's greater than any other pleasure which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, even though in the last final words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the message is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has two separate pleasures. But one thing is clear, no reason to feel bad, quite on the contrary. Baby Simcha, because first of all, this is your destiny, it's all about ultimately bringing pleasure to God. And if God, you know that Yetzer Hara is in full tact, and it comes in very strong, you know you right away. Right away, that itself is a sign that you're not a tzaddik. Because a tzaddik, again, has transformed his Yetzer Hara. It doesn't present itself with any ra anymore, with any evil, doesn't persuade the person, doesn't give that passionate temptation, or passionate presentation to the person. It doesn't give that to the tzaddik. He doesn't present it in that way, because he completely transformed the Yetzer Hara. So when you know you're not, the fact that you have this temptation knows that itself tells you you're not a tzaddik. So the first thing you know, that's a Kodesh Baruch Hu's decision, and it's all about giving him pleasure. And if it's giving him pleasure, if that's what he has for you, do it, just knowing that this is what he has in stock for you. This is what he has. This is what his master plan. This is part of his master plan, that you remain a Beini, not a tzaddik. That itself is a good reason to be sameach. But additionally, don't think for a moment that you come in just like second class. You should know God has two separate pleasures, and one of his pleasures, and one of his greatest pleasures, is this pleasure of the Yid doing iskafia, not the hishapcha, not the transformation, but the concept of doing the Yetzer Hara. So that's another reason that you person should and can and ought to stand with a constant tone and a constant mood and mode of simcha v'tuv levav, joy, elation, a gladness of heart, in a service to God. Have a great night.